whole abundance of stories, parables. These stories are, of course, intrinsically sacred, but they are also timeless. And therefore, whether you identify yourself as religious or spiritual or secular, you can learn these sacred Buddhist stories and to apply them in your everyday life as a source of equanimity, courage, hope, compassion, and empowerment. In other words, you don't have to be a Buddhist to get benefit from learning and contemplating those stories. I grew up in Tibet, a culture that is full of stories. Tibet is a country that has a long history. Actually, Tibet had an empire one time, which we don't hear so much. We often hear about the Mongol Empire, Manchu Empire, but there was a Tibetan Empire. It is said that in our historical books that for a long time, the Tibet was governed by three principles: shamanism, riddles, and the stories, until they developed written language. The Tibetan kings and also queens actually used stories to give guidance to their citizens. It's a way to communicate with each other. And I also grew up in Tibet when Tibet was very much a different world. We didn't have lots of entertainment, no TVs, hardly anybody read books in my family. But my grandparents who raised me share always stories every day. Same story all the time, and we never got bored with that. Literally, they tell the same story maybe 300 times a year. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. It was entertainment for us because we didn't have TVs, and also those stories, to me, give a foundation for me and for everybody to develop our idea of a value system, right and wrong, and also moral principles. And just like that, stories can be really wonderful. They can make you sometimes cry. They can make you sometimes laugh. But also they told me lots of ghost stories too. That's another story, maybe not so sacred. I remember that I had a hard time to go out at night after they told me lots of ghost stories. Anyway, Buddhism also uses sacred stories to feel this deep connection with what they call Dharma, the spiritual path to the enlightenment. The Dharma begins by taking refuge in the Buddhist version of eternity, which is called the three jewels: Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. But the question is, what is Buddha? Is Buddha singular or plural? That's a whole philosophical debate, which we would not get into. But Buddha is not really plural. Buddha is not singular either. But when we say Buddha, it does not refer to Shakyamuni Buddha. It refers to the Buddha, the unborn Buddha, lies in each of us. The inherent goodness, the that lies in each of us. Something maybe Thomas Merton witnessed on the 4th Street. Every time when I come to Louisville, I hope I'm pronouncing your city correctly. Somebody told me there are 2 ways to pronounce the city of Louisville. To me, I feel I'm pilgrim, actually. I came here as a pilgrim. And I feel I'm on the pilgrimage. So every time when I come to the city, I feel I'm visiting a holy city, and always want to visit and walk on the 4th Street, because Thomas Merton had an epiphany, I think, where he saw there's something amazing about humanity. And we can call it Buddha-ness, or the unborn Buddha that lies in each of us. So anyway, the Shakyamuni Buddha is a historical Buddha who was awakened to his own Buddha nature. And not only that, who embodied and that awakening in everyday life. But we also take refuge in Shakyamuni Buddha, not as a personal liberator, but as a guide, as a source of inspiration. To do that, it requires some kind of connection or affinity with the Shakyamuni Buddha. In the same way, Christians feel a deep affinity and even divine love towards Jesus. In the same way, in Buddhism, also we try to cultivate this connection and deep affinity with the Shakyamuni Buddha, so that affinity can motivate oneself to enter the path of Dharma, the path to enlightenment, and not only that, to embody all these enlightened principles of the Buddhism, as well as also the Shakyamuni Buddha's attributes. So therefore, in Buddhism, we tell lots of stories about Shakyamuni Buddha, and also the Jataka stories, which are stories of the bodhisattvas. And some of them are wonderful stories because in those Jataka stories, characters are not always human beings. Sometimes animals, like, for example, rabbits, monkeys, elephant, and so forth. It's very entertaining when you listen to Jataka stories. But all the stories have a moral. They teach us how to be selfless, courageous, and compassionate. So when you hear the stories of Shakyamuni Buddha, such as 12 great deeds of a Buddha, you begin to feel this affinity with the Shakyamuni Buddha. And you feel that you're connecting with I guess, is it done? Yes? Oh, okay. I thought it was a signal that I should end my... Yeah, you really feel this deep connection with the Shakyamuni Buddha, and to the extent that you want to follow his path, and you want to become like Shakyamuni Buddha. So to become Shakyamuni Buddha, or to become like Shakyamuni Buddha, is actually to become who you are, to become yourself. But you see, there's this kind of interesting logic in that. First, we developed this longing to almost not mimic, but to almost follow or try to become like Shakyamuni Buddha. But that whole journey of trying to become like Shakyamuni Buddha lead you to the actualization of yourself. And in the end, you become who you are. You actualize your true nature, which we call the unborn Buddha, or the inherent goodness. And so stories plays very important roles in the Buddhist practice. And then there are a lot of amazing stories that we could talk, but also many of the stories are actually illustrated in the sacred paintings known as tankas. When you visit Tibetan homes, monasteries, and temples. Often they are filled with lots of tankas, and tankas are images of bodhisattvas, Buddhas, Uchta Devatas, and also stories like life story of Shakyamuni Buddha. And when you look at those tankas, sacred penance, they actually speak story without words. They communicate with you, and they invoke, again, there's a sacred intention to follow the path of Shakyamuni Buddha. And so there are many ways of telling stories in Buddhism, through words, art, poem, chant, and sometimes even you could say mudras, sacred gestures. And therefore, story is a very much integral part of the whole tradition in Buddhism, especially in Tibetan Buddhism. And also, we all have stories to share with each other too. Like we all have a personal anecdote that we can share, and that also inspire other people as well. I was planning to tell a Buddhist story right now, but I don't know whether I have enough time or not. Perhaps not. We got only 10 minutes, right?
I think we would love to hear it.
All right. So, well, now it's all gone from my mind. Hopefully, it will come back. I remember it now. It's the same story I told, I think, at this very place many years ago. So please give me permission to tell the same story. Hopefully, most of you are not here, and so you would not hear the same story. But remember, I'm from culture where people can listen to the same story 300 times a year, or maybe more than that. The story is about Avalokiteshvara. Please don't take it literally. Avalokiteshvara is a bodhisattva, and bodhisattva is a being that could be an archetypal being, but also can be human being. We could be bodhisattvas, or we can become bodhisattvas. Bodhisattva means awakened heroine, awakened hero, whose sole spiritual practice is not to seek peace or transcendence for herself or for himself, but to be in this world, which is very messy. Human world is very messy. Well, there are a lot of good things in human world: candles, chocolate, right, ice cream, and good jokes. But overall, it's very messy too. It's very difficult to be human. I'm sure you all related to this idea that there are moments we feel it's really hard to be human being when life is filled with tragedies and suffering. When we see world is descending into chaoses, and we don't know what is waiting for us or for the humanity. So it's very messy sometimes, this human world. But the story, the bodhisattva is this ideal that you would never give up your aspiration. You continue to love this life and love this world, and to seek the enlightenment, transcendence, not in a heaven, not in a light, but in confusion, in suffering, in messiness. You'll find purity not in the purity, but in the messiness. And that is the idea of bodhisattva, often represented by lotus blossoming beautifully in mud. Lotus would not blossom on the beautiful rocks like marbles or gold, but blossoms in mud. The lotus symbolizes our courage, our enlightenment, and mud symbolizes the messiness of this human world. So this story is about Avalokiteshvara, bodhisattva. Chinese call Kuan Yin, Tibetans call Shandyazak, in Sanskrit Avalokiteshvara. the story begins that Avalokiteshvara wants to liberate, wants to enlighten everyone in the world, and she or he wants to take everyone to some kind of suffering-free Buddha realm. And he or she made a vow to do that. So she came to the world, and he or she awakened all beings, enlightened everyone, and he or she, it's hard to use the pronouns, but Avalokiteshvara took everyone, all beings from the world, to some kind of wonderful Buddha realm, and the world was empty. And then Avalokiteshvara told to herself or himself, that's tricky, and now I can retire forever, eternally, because the world is empty. And Avalokiteshvara was ready to retire eternally. And when Avalokiteshvara looked down, the world is filled with all these confused souls. And Avalokiteshvara come back, empty the world, and just help everybody to move or migrate to some kind of wonderful Buddha field. And Avalokiteshvara did that 6 times. Every time when the world is empty, everybody moved away, the world is again filled with all these confused souls. In that moment, Avalokiteshvara lost his or her vow to awaken everybody, and told himself or herself, I'm going to give up, I'm going to retire, basically. And power of breaking Avalokiteshvara precept, she or he body fell into pieces. And Avalokiteshvara was in this painful experience, just agony, pain from losing the precepts, and the body being just fell apart into pieces, and there was an agony. In that moment, Buddha Amitabha, Buddha of infinite light, showed up and blessed Avalokiteshvara into a 4-armed Avalokiteshvara, 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara, and 1,000-eyed Avalokiteshvara. Today you will actually see in the Tibetan paintings all these different forms of Avalokiteshvara. Some of them have 4 arms, some of them have 1,000 and 1,000 eyes. And then Avalokiteshvara arose again from that agony, just like Phoenix rose from the ash, and vowed to never give up the intention to help everyone in the world. And so we can take this wonderful story, and we can be like Avalokiteshvara. We can be not the Avalokiteshvara who is seeking eternal early retirement, if I can say that, but Avalokiteshvara who has 1,000 arms, who has 1,000 eyes, and who is willing to be in this world and to love this world, and to take all our challenges, tragedies, not as a defeat, but as a source of growth, courage, and spiritual as well as also personal development. Thank you very much, everybody.